Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Club podcast, where every month we deep dive into a different aspect of cinema, directors, genres, actors, or franchises. It doesn't matter, because it's always fun at the Film Club. I'm Dean.
I'm Boo.
And this month we're going through the filmography of one Edward D. Wood Jr. That's right, Ed Wood. And this week we are concluding with
Plan 9 from Outer Space.
That's right, the famous or infamous Plan 9 from Outer Space, considered the worst film ever made from 1957
By some guy.
It is
And made it a cult classic.
This is like the original worst movie of all time, right? This is the original goated bad movie.
Yeah.
Before The Room, before Troll 2,
Yeah.
before the breakup.
Don't even get me started on that one.
I like how the Jennifer Aniston Vince Vaughn movie is worse than Troll 2 to you.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen Troll 2.
You've never seen Troll 2?
I've never seen any of the Troll movies.
Really?
Yeah, so I would have to give Troll 2, well, the whole franchise, I'd have to give it a shot. And then really, I have to give The Breakup a shot too, because I never finished the movie. So I need to come back at it as an adult and be like, I understand.
Not now I know.
I might have been too young and just been like, oh my God, enough with the drama, who cares? Now that I'm in a relationship, I get it.
You understand.
Clothes everywhere. Stuff everywhere.
Walking around in an apartment you refuse to leave.
Yeah, he just won't get out.
I know. It just curls up at the foot of the bed. But yeah, Jesus Christ. I haven't seen the breakup in like 10 years.
That's why it's like I'd have to watch it as an adult to see if, maybe I change my mind about it.
Maybe. But today we are talking about Plan 9 from Outer Space, and I've seen this movie in its entirety once before this, but this is a completely new viewing for you, right?
I've seen it in pieces.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people see this in pieces on like the clip shows of like worst movies or, the countdowns.
Yeah, so it was kind of a thing where it's like I think I get the gist of it, and then you watch it in its entirety and it's like, oh, okay, now I really understand kind of what was happening.
Kind of.
The
movie kind of falls apart in the second half, right?
Yeah, I mean, when the premise of the movie is, hey, I have all this stock footage that I shot of Bella. Now he's passed, and I kind of want to make a tribute to him. So I'm going to write a story around this footage that we shot.
Even then, it's even
like,
vague if that's his goal.
And it's like, so this is what we get from the stock footage. I'm like, we should have just made, another Dracula.
It's kind.
Don't even get me started on fake Dracula that pops up in this movie.
That is a thing about this movie's production that's a huge shadow over it, right? Because Plan 9 from Outer Space literally just came from the fact that Ed Wood just had extra footage of Lugosi and had like half of an idea for an Alien Invaders movie and just kind of melded them together. But it's also a thing where Ed Wood, to my knowledge, this was supposed to be his like magnum opus. This was his Citizen Kane. Yeah,
and I think it's somewhere in the notes that this was like his film that he was the most proud of.
Which is very interesting because I
would go Bride of the Monster.
Honestly, Glen or Glenda would be more in line what I would think he'd be proud of in terms of like putting his brain on the screen. But like Bride of the Monster is a better made film than this.
Yeah. I mean, I was really disappointed that we got spaceships or UFOs. I really wanted them to be the paper plates that we saw in the Tim Burton's Ed Wood movie.
Yes.
I was like, no, paper plates, please.
That's something else is the Tim Burton Ed Wood film really does paint Ed Wood as a less competent director than he probably actually was. I'm not saying Ed Wood was a great filmmaker, all right? He wasn't Orson Welles, he wasn't John Huston, he wasn't like Fritz Lang. But he knew when his movies were cheap and he knew when his movies weren't working, right? Like we can get that or glean that from his stuff because the props are trying to evoke spaceships or an airplane cockpit.
I mean, I did like I mean, I know we're talking about Ed Wood. This is his month and him as a director. But I did like the attention that Tim Burton paid to Ed Wood's movies. And I was like, wow, you really see that throughout the Ed Wood Tim Burton movie, where it's like, oh, he got that from this movie. He got the opening cards from that movie. But I mean, for being, I don't want to say Plan 9's a cheap movie because, I mean, there was some funding behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting story about the funding behind this movie.
Yeah, the funding for this is a mystery to me because I don't know how he can get this much money.
But I love the lighting with Criswell.
Yes. Criswell. Oh, Lord Criswell. Okay, so do we want to tell people how the funding happened, or do we just want to go right into the Hollywood of broken dreams here?
I think we have to jump into the funding because, I mean, it's in the Tim Burton movie, and it's just ridiculous.
Yes.
But it's like, I could totally see you and the guys doing that. Well, I mean, things happen. We really needed the money.
We may or may not have thought about asking for money from religious affiliates and getting baptized for cash, but it happens because that's like the urban legend, right? That Ed Wood had his whole cast and crew baptized to get funding for Plan 9, right?
Yeah.
Now, was that like a real thing, or is that like exaggerated? Because I can't imagine he got because the story he's got everyone to do it.
No, I don't think it was everybody. I think I saw somewhere that it was like some of them. Some of them ended up getting baptized just to get the cash. And I was like, I could totally see you guys pulling that off.
It's really funny because he was like friends with like Breckenridge.
Yeah, Bunny Breckenridge.
Who was fabulously wealthy.
Yeah.
Who plays like the supreme leader in this, and I'm like, why couldn't Bunny just like loan you like 10 grand?
Look, he's probably like, Ed, I love you. You're my friend. I'm not giving you no money. I'll star in this. I'll do what I need to do. You're not getting any cash. I know I'm not getting it back.
I mean, Ed probably wasn't a safe investment in 1957.
Yeah, that's why it's like, friends till the end, but
no,
I can't do that.
Oh God, I mean that's also just interesting is that Ed Wood was friends with Breckenridge, and I guess Bunny Breckenridge is somebody that's kind of like Criswell and all those others who is like a forgotten celebrity, but Bunny Breckenridge, who's known as like John Breckenridge, I think was his birth name, was a very, very wealthy socialite. Like he was a grandson of like a vice president and generals and this and that, and he was like he was the 1% of the 1940s, 50s, 60s, whatever. Yeah. And it's so weird to think that Ed Wood rubbed shoulders with both Bunny Breckenridge, a 1% or fabulously wealthy person, and Criswell, a TV psychic that's impact on pop culture was so small there is no surviving material of his show. Yeah. And there's also like vampires in this movie. The
legend that is Bela Lugosi's in this movie.
Technicality.
Still, but he was friends with him. If we're going to talk about the range of Ed Wood's, life.
Or the size of his stable of actors.
It's just like, really, you were, with all these people in Hollywood. It's crazy.
It's
but cool.
Insane. Yeah. I mean, I
friends with Tor Johnson.
Which, oh God, we're gonna get to Tor Johnson once we get to his like appearance in the movie, but I want to go over this, right? Watching the Ed Wood movies, Glen or Glenda, Bride of the Monster, and Plan 9, I get this sense that Ed Wood's filmography is real Hollywood filmmaking. And I don't mean that like, oh, it's made in like MGM, the backlots, and it's like all the gallantry and this and that. I mean, like, I'm making a movie in Hollywood, USA, but I am the bottom of the barrel filmmaking. Like, I'm getting, like, joke celebrities. Like Criswell. He was famous, but he was famous as kind of like a gag. Or, like, I'm getting Vampira, who I think at the time wasn't even doing the TV hosting shtick anymore. I mean, even if she was, it was on the back end, right? Because she stopped doing it in the 60s.
Yeah, I mean, she might have been slowly, coming to a close on her show.
Mm-hmm.
But I know it was a thing where she was like, I'll do the movie, but I'm not doing any of your lines because they're bad.
Vampira also made this statement that she didn't really care how she looked in the movie because she was convinced no one would ever see this.
Yeah. I mean,
and now
you've been a part of projects where you're like, yeah, this isn't gonna make it off the ground.
Life happens. But that's the thing, like the Boulevard of Broken Dream aspect of Hollywood. Like even Lugosi being in the Ed Wood canon is another like Boulevard of Broken Dreams, because Lugosi near the end had a rough go of it.
Yeah, he did.
He had a rough go of Hollywood basically after Dracula.
Well, I mean his whole life, trying to break into the movie scene, gets typecast, and just kind of struggles to push out of, this character.
Mm-hmm.
But this character cemented him as immortal, so it's like you kind of did.
It's the sad two-sided or double-edged sword of it.
It's like you did achieve the dream, but it could have been a little bit more.
Yeah,
it could have been more fulfilling.
I mean, it's a thing where watching Bride of the Monster, like fucking Bela Lugosi still had it in his fucking 70s.
Oh,
all right,
yeah, that's why it's like he's the Hungarian hunk. Dude had it.
He looks like a monkfish, for God's sakes.
Why you gotta be so rude? Don't be rude to the Hungarian hunk.
I see. But I mean, I'm just bringing this up because that is a thing about the Ed Wood auteurist vision. Is he's this kind of filmmaker where any celebrity status is gold to him. And in this movie, it's very interesting, like how many people he has in this movie that are like recognizable as like we're famous of the day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the movie opens with literally Criswell Presents, which I can only imagine is a riff off of the Criswell TV show or Variety Hour or whatever it is. There's no surviving footage of Criswell other than this movie.
This movie, yeah. And it was his film debut.
Yes, his film debut. I can't imagine he shows up to many other films because Criswell has a very interesting delivery, and I don't know if it was just do the voiceover in one take, Chris, or what, because some of the dialogues he says are pure gold, because future events such as these will take place in the future where you will soon be.
I know, sitting there I'm like, but I'm pretty sure he wrote that, because I know he was like, yo, Ed, not really digging what's on the page, I'm just gonna wing it.
I'm wondering how much of this was rewritten, because like some of the dialogue's fine, like it's delivered like oddly, but it's not awful. But yeah, we open up with Criswell giving the whole preamble of we're gonna have something spooky going on, and then we see some stock footage of Lugosi at a funeral, which I will say the stock footage of Lugosi, does it blend well with the rest of the movie? I think it does. At least the graveyard stuff kind of blends.
Blends as in story-wise or visually? Because, I mean, the quality, it jumps a lot. Where you could tell, we're going from stock footage that was probably on a... I'm trying to think on a 16?
Maybe it was definitely not 8. It was probably on like some 16 stock, and then they're shooting this in 35. Or they shot the stock footage like a year ago and they only had one print of it.
Yeah, because like you can see the quality dip, but it's like, yeah, I could see it going hand in hand with the cemetery stuff. You feel the emotion from Bella, that he's distraught over the loss of his wife, his young vampira wife.
Yes, yeah.
We're like, oh, okay, good on you. You landed vampira. But then we have the problem that I get to. Why is his mausoleum so small? I'm like, you have like 6 people coming out of this tiny little room. Like, come on, really?
The graveyard is beautiful, and I will not have you besmirch this
I'm not knocking
surrealist
it.
graveyard.
I enjoyed the graveyard. I love the graveyard. I'm very into Halloween. Graveyards are awesome. You still haven't taken me to Hollywood Forever after you promised me you would.
Hollywood Forever, like I don't want to go to a boneyard and watch movies. That's spooky as fuck. Bela Lugosi might come up and get me.
He's not buried there. He's buried in Culver City.
That's what you say.
Because it's true, but it's like I enjoyed the graveyard scene.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just like, you guys really couldn't have built this just a little bit taller so it feels like a mausoleum.
Instead, it looks like a half, like two refrigerator boxes kind of stapled together. Which, okay, this is something that I noticed watching the previous Ed Wood films, right? The other auteurs films. The Hollywood of Broken Dreams aspect is apparent throughout his movies, right? He gets people who were, maybe like the dregs of Hollywood or the outsider people of Hollywood and brings them into his little family.
Yeah.
The other thing is his movies have a very handmade quality, and that's probably by necessity because they had no money.
Yeah, there's no funding.
But the graveyard is like the perfect example of this, where you can tell like the little headstones are made of like cheap plywood.
Foam,
It's
cardboard.
The trees are obviously just like rolled in. You can see that they're not outside. It's in like a black studio space, and they're just pumping fog in. And it's atmospheric, and it looks like something out of like a 30s Universal monster movie, but like a cheap one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you can't, try to throw this with like the Wolfman, where you're out in the woods and you feel like, oh shit, if he finds me, I'm cooked.
Well, that's actually a good point. The Wolfman, right? Because we have this kind of the same thing, foggy woods and forests or whatever. But even then, it's almost like Ed Wood is going for the idea of a graveyard, like the cockpit, right? Because after the the graveyard stuff and all that we go up into the skies and we're in the airplane.
We're flying to Burbank Airport. Which made me so happy.
You're a big fan?
I was like, Burbank!
Oh,
my town, I miss it.
It's your favorite.
It is.
But the cockpit of the airplane, right, where we see Trent and he's flying or whatever, and you can see that it's
the shower curtain.
It's a shower curtain.
That gets used throughout the entire movie.
Yes, and they're not holding controls. They're holding what looks like a half bowl or a piece of wood. That's not an airplane control panel, and they're in like desks. And I mean like they're in like those like kids' desks from like school. And you can so tell that the co-pilot is looking down at a script in between lines. Like, it's the idea of a set. Like, they're not... Like, I'm trying to figure out if Ed Wood's intent was... Like, that was his intent. Like, did he just not care? Was he just hoping the audience would just let it go? Was this, like, a thing where... Oh, we don't have the money, we'll just try our best. Or was he like, no, I want this very, like, surrealist idea of a place. I don't know.
He was probably, we just need to jump to the next scene. This is what we need to do. We need to get this filmed. We'll set dress it very minimalistic. So we could get to where the UFO appears and everyone collapses.
You think this was all just like out of necessity?
Well, yeah. I mean, do you think Ed really had, the accessibility to get to all the machines or, stuff to make the cockpit look like a full-fledged cockpit? No.
Yeah, it is true. It's very interesting to think what would this have looked like if he had more money. Because I've heard the thing where Ed Wood had this idea or this assertion throughout his career was he had full knowledge his movies weren't good. He knew they weren't well made, but he was convinced his scripts were good. They just didn't have the money to execute them correctly. And I'm trying to think, if Plan 9 had a $1 million budget for 1957, would it have actually just been a better movie? Would it have, with the script as is, or would it have just been a better looking bad movie?
Probably would have been better looking. Because, I mean, the story needed to be fleshed out. I mean, we don't get that the aliens want to have an army of the dead.
Yeah.
Until the end, so it's like...
Also, the aliens' motivations aren't revealed.
Till the very end. Yeah, so it's like... Can't just blame it on the budget.
Yeah.
A lot of it's in the storytelling. It's like, you had a interesting concept, but it needed to be fleshed out more.
Yeah, which... that's a critique we've had for all the Ed Wood movies up to this point. Like, Bride of the Monster is the closest it comes to a
Yeah.
normal plotted story, right? But,
I mean,
you
I
know.
will give him points. The stock footage was used a lot better in this movie compared to Glen or Glenda,
Oh, absolutely.
where it's just like, I don't understand what you're trying to go for. And this one, it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense. You're using stock footage of a plane, of of the soldiers trying to battle off the UFOs.
Oh, you're imposing like the what is it? The flying saucer
Mm-hmm.
over like the LA streets to try and sell the effect.
Those were fun. Just seeing the flying saucers fly over, all the studios in Hollywood, people seeing them and running into phone booths to call the police. I'm like, there we go.
It's a thing where I'm like, that actually works.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what I was getting at. Like, the stock footage in this actually melds pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But the quality drop, like you said, is so apparent that it can take you out of it.
Yeah.
But I think it still comes down to that Ed Wood aesthetic of he's like a handcrafted filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
He's working with such little money and such big ideas
Mm-hmm.
that he's using any resource he can to get the movie made.
Yeah.
Which, for good or ill, we're gonna figure that out by the end of this, whether or not he was a genius or a madman. But as it goes, we get to see Vampiro raised from the dead, and Lugosi, dies, and then, for now, but he'll come back.
He'll come back, sort of.
Sort of, yeah. And this is around the time we finally get to see Tor Johnson appear as the police inspector.
Yes.
And I've discovered why Tor Johnson didn't talk at all in Bride of the Monster.
Yes.
That they called him the Swedish Angel, I believe.
Yes, I think that's what you've told me before.
Yeah, that was his wrestling name. He has the thickest
Oh yeah.
thickest
It's
accent.
a very thick accent.
His accent for the listeners at home, he has a thicker accent than Bela Lugosi's Hungarian accent.
Yeah.
Bela Lugosi could have taught diction lessons compared to Tor Johnson here.
Yeah, it was very thick, but it was also very surprising to see him speak.
Yeah.
And I've only seen Bride of the Monster. I haven't seen him in anything else, so that's why I was kind of like, I know he's going to have the accent, but I was just like, wow, he's talking. Because mostly in the clips that you see of this movie,
He's the zombified version.
he's the zombie. So that's why I figured, I'm like, oh, we're going to get him as a zombie this entire time. But it's like, oh no, he's, alive and he's up and running. And then, suddenly, oh, he's dead. And I'm like, you guys haven't even checked the pulse or anything. We're just all looking at him laying on the ground. Nope,
I
dead.
love when the lieutenant comes up. I was like, oh man, I don't know what we can do
Yep.
here, and he's scratching his temple with his gun. He's like, oh, this is spooky, boys. The cops in this are the Three Stooges. Like, okay, they're not the Three Stooges because they're not doing like slapstick, but they are comedic relief through and through.
Well, the one that, scratches his head with the gun, he was like, I want to see if Ed's paying attention. And then he wasn't. So he was like, oh, no, okay. It made it into the movie.
Oh God, that's something that like crosses my mind a lot watching Ed Wood films. Was he intentionally trying to be funny? Because I get a sense of camp throughout all of his films.
Oh, yeah.
There's a sense of like a campy, like tongue-in-cheek element through it, but I don't know if that's intentional, and I don't know if he was ever intending to be funny or for these to be taken seriously as horror films, sci-fi films, epic films. Like, do you think he, like the Kelton the Cop character, the Don Knotts guy, Paul Marco, do you think he casted him purely to be funny?
I don't think he casted him to be funny. I mean, that might have been...
He cast him because he was roommates with Bunny Breckenridge?
Could have been. But it could have been a thing where it's like, oh, that's an added bonus that you are comedic. But I think Ed was just kind of like, we got to jump to the next, because a lot of his movies were made like in 4 or 5 days.
Do you know the turnaround for this one?
I don't. I can look it up while we talk about something else, just to see, how long it took.
Don't worry, everyone out there, we're professional. We have our notes on Google.
Yes, we do.
But we get the Tor Johnson of it all where he's trying. Like, I don't think his performance is bad. It's
No.
stilted because the dialogue is awkward and it's not in his like in a natural cadence for him.
Hmm.
Like, I get that. But the fact that Ed gave him so much dialogue is where it's kind of funky. But that's neither here nor there. But we then get to see why Tor Johnson is here.
Yeah.
Because, oh, they found the gravediggers from the beginning of the movie.
That was one of my favorite parts when they find the bodies of the gravediggers.
Yes, yes. Because I think we mentioned at the beginning in the stock footage when Lugosi's at the funeral of his wife, like the other side when we were talking about it blending, where there were gravediggers in a different shot, and they came over after Lugosi left to to finish filling up the grave, and it's like, oh, that's kind of a blended shot. But then the gravediggers get got by Vampira, I suppose, and we come to see the gravediggers' bodies now, and their bodies are Knott's Berry Farm-esque minor dummies. They are wonderful.
And I love the poses that they're in, as they're just laying there. Like, clearly just someone put the costumes on them and just threw them into the ditch.
And they had to do them face down, so you couldn't tell if they were dummies.
Well, no, one of them's face up, but they have the arms, like, draped
over their head.
Over the face, and it's just like, no, I could tell that's a dummy.
It is...
But it's great.
It is so great, because the dummies are not, like... I know when I'm saying dummies, people are thinking like, oh, they're like a mannequin or this or that. No, it is like a pair of coveralls filled with like hay and then like a suit over them. That's what these dummies look like. They're like rag dolls.
I mean, they have heads on them, so they kind of look like crash dummies.
I guess.
But yeah, that was a favorite of mine, just seeing them and, the screaming, and they'd pan back to them, and, it's just the dummies just, laying there, and oh my god.
I love when this flying saucer goes overhead and they drop the dummies, and then it cuts to one of the gravediggers, the actual actor, rolling in the grass and settling, and I'm like, wait a minute, you had the gravedigger for that shot. Why are they picking up just dummies in this shot? Did you only have them for enough time for that one shot?
No. I was liking when the UFOs were flying over and they were dropping all like 20 people that were in the cemetery.
Oh, God.
They were like those goats that, when they hear a loud noise and they get scared, they just kind of fall over.
Yes.
They did that. I was like, I love that. That's hilarious.
It's just funny because the flying saucer aspect of this movie, right? Because we see flying saucers when they're in the plane, and we see flying saucers like kind of sprinkled throughout the movies.
Yeah.
But the flying saucers like powers or abilities are never really explained, because it's like, oh, it's flying overhead and everyone like, oh no, and they all like fall over and collapse.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it flies over and it's like, oh no, Martha, hold me, and it's fine. Like, it's very, very weird. But the gravediggers are gone. Tor Johnson must go and like investigate, and then the mausoleum opens up. And then we get
the tiny mausoleum.
And then we get Mr. Lugosi.
The much taller Lugosi.
The much younger Lugosi.
Yes.
Which, okay. Does this fake Shemp sell it at all? Do you at any point believe that is Lugosi? No, not even a little bit.
I was so mad. Like, no, that's not him.
It's very interesting because the obvious reason is because like Bela Lugosi had passed away by this point. Like, this film was shot in 56, and I think Lugosi passed away in like 55.
I think so.
Yeah, because it's released in like 57. Yeah. So the idea, I guess, was that Ed Wood hired his wife's chiropractor.
Lugosi passed in August 16th, 1956.
56. Okay. So, okay, I guess that would make sense. Like, maybe they shot, because if this is 57 is in release and it's August of 56, so they probably shot this in like December, my guess.
Could have.
That was weird. I feel that's probably like the timeline we're looking at, because this movie's production had to have been after Lugosi had passed, right?
Or, during the middle of it,
And maybe he was already, like, in the hospital. Well, I guess he wasn't in the hospital because he, like, passed away in his apartment?
In his apartment.
Okay, so
It could have been a thing where, maybe Ed was, trying to write him into the story, or it's like, we don't need you to come on to set just yet.
Maybe.
We don't know. We'll never know.
We'll never know. But yeah, the reason why we have the fake Shemp is because Lugosi had passed away by this point, and the actor they got, I think he's doing fine. He's not being asked to do a lot. Lugosi is silent throughout the film. So he just has to be intimidating and have a widow's peak haircut. That's all he has to do. I know it's offensive to you.
It is. He doesn't pull it off.
He does not.
He does not.
He does not. He doesn't do the hands. That's what you want. You want the hands, the Lugosi hands.
You need the hands. You need the cape work. Homeboy just doesn't have it. He's a chiropractor. He's
just a chiropractor.
Yeah.
Apparently, he also thought he didn't have it. He thought this movie was a pile of shit. But, yeah, because after this is when this is like just more stock footage of the saucers over Hollywood, and we kind of get to the back end of the movie. And this is kind of like, for me, is where the movie really starts to show its bad qualities. We get like the Battle of Los Angeles, where it's, a bunch of army stock footage and firecrackers going off, and it's like, this really doesn't. You're in this Battle of LA for a long time.
Yeah.
And then we get to see the aliens, and Bunny Breckinridge is the best actor in this entire alien trio. And the other guy is like, you stupid fools, and the stupidness and stupid. Like, does not really work.
No.
And you also get, like, the pilot, like, Trent, I think is his name, who is doing his best, his level best to be, like,
Him and his wife are regretting moving that close to the cemetery.
Yeah, that's the thing. Those three things start to happen, and it's so long, and it's so boring, and I'm like, where's the funny, spooky stuff? Where's the parts that are, like, keeping my attention? Like, the aliens are, like, interesting, but it's only interesting because, like, Breckenridge knows exactly what movie he's in.
He does, but they're not alien enough. It's just like, oh, cool. It's just people in different costumes. It's like, I want something that feels like, what the fuck is this?
You want the big heads and the black eyes and the long chins and the wings and all that.
Should watch Coneheads.
Oh god, could you imagine if those were Coneheads?
That would have been something for the 50s.
That would have been something for the 50s. God, jeez, I'm now trying to imagine Dan Aykroyd in Plan 9 from Outer Space.
He would do phenomenal.
He would.
I'm like, where's the camera?
It's fine. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
But yeah, God, I'm trying to remember what happens after this, because this chunk of the movie to me is duller than dishwater.
Yeah, it's a little boring, but I think this is also where we get Tora Johnson crawling out of the grave.
Yes.
And that is one of the coolest shot sequences. Scary. Tora Johnson looks good as a zombie.
He really does, because this happens right after not Lugosi, not Dracula, comes to Trent's wife's house.
And just, kind of, does the shtick where he covers his face and walks up to the bed.
And she, like, runs away.
She runs around the bed and out the room, and he's kind of like, all right, cool, I'll just let you run. And it's just like, what?
Yeah. And I love how in, like, the Lugosi stock footage, Lugosi's, like, moving around. He's kind of, like, doing a run a little bit. But when it's, like, the actor, the stand-in, he's, like, walking as slow as possible to keep the cape over his face and not hit anything.
That's why it's like, I love when we cut over to Lugosi and he's just animated and he's moving and doing the cape work, doing, everything that Dracula does. And this guy is just like, okay, cover my face. Oh crap, I can't see my feet. I might trip if I
move with gusto.
And it's like, Lugosi had it for a reason. Lugosi was Dracula.
I see.
And that was his stage-used cape.
Oh, really? Was that the one he got buried with?
I don't know if that's the one he got buried with. I think he had a couple of those, but Bella showed up in his own gear, and this guy, no.
I love how the movie makes no attempt to explain why
Dracula's there.
Dracula's there or why he has a cape at all.
Well, I
But-
mean, Dracula has a cape.
Yes, but is he supposed to be Dracula in this?
I mean, apparently,
He's credited as Old Man.
yeah, old man Dracula.
Old Man Dracula. But yeah, but we get Tor Johnson rising from the grave, which I will say
It's awesome.
it is the iconic shot.
Yeah.
It is the most iconic shot I think of the Ed Wood canon, right? It's that low angle, Tor Johnson getting out of the grave. He has the whites in his eyes. He's got the scars, the smoke and everything's coming on. And I'm like, this is what Ed Wood was trying to do his entire career.
Yeah.
Was to get this level of atmosphere, that look, that tone, that everything right here. And then Tor Johnson has trouble getting out of the grave because he was a large man.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're in a hole trying to climb your way out while pretending to be a zombie. That's going to be hard.
Yes. But now Tor Johnson is out and he picks up the girl, or he's out and he's wandering around, and this is when we get the cops that show up again and find he's gone. And then this is where the movie finally starts to try to explain things. We get like the alien who gives his motives of like, oh, the humans are getting too close to the solar bomb, and if they do it, they'll destroy the world, so we must destroy them with Plan 9 from outer space.
And it's like, wow, we've come full circle. We understand what the title means.
We finally understand what the title means, even though Criswell says that's not the title. It's ghouls from beyond the grave or something, or ghouls from space. Yeah, but we finally get the explanation of what the aliens' motives are, because they're here to kill humanity so humanity doesn't kill everyone else, right?
Yeah.
Which I think was the theme in Bride of the Monster with like the nuclear energy thing, where
With the atomic Superman.
the atomic Superman, right? Like, why should we explore atomic super energy? It will only lead to more death and destruction because of the atom bomb and blah 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 blah. So that's a theme that is at least carries through the Wood films, right?
Yeah.
And then we get the police investigators and the pilot, and they find the spaceship just hiding in the graveyard.
You mean behind the trees?
Behind the trees.
With, the huge beams of light, You don't notice us over here, guys.
I love when the police detective's like, how in the world did we miss this? Man, they must have some cloaking technology. How could we have missed this?
And you go, sir, how are you promoted to detective?
How in the world were you promoted to detective? I also love how they bang the spaceship and they're like, that doesn't sound like no metal I've ever heard. And it's just like a ding, ding, ding. It is fun. It is fun. Because once they finally get inside the alien ship and we get to see what the alien ship looks like, and it's like a workbench with like a ham radio on it.
Yeah. Minimalistic, simplistic.
Yes, it's the idea of a spaceship.
It's the future.
It's the future. And we get the alien-human confrontation, and
we also get the world's longest monologue.
oh god, we get the longest monologue, exposition dump, dialogue. This is the part of the movie where I am like real close to just checking right out. Like the second half of this movie gets like really slow and kind of boring.
Yeah.
This is like, oh man, they're in the alien ship. We're gonna get like a fun thing and da 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 da. And I'm like, we have to wait like 10 full fucking minutes of monologuing and exposition and snark and this alien calling humanity stupid fools before somebody throws a punch.
Yeah.
And it finally throws a punch. And then we actually get some like excitement and action at the end.
The alien's like, how human of you throwing hands.
Throwing hands? What a bitch. You don't know. You punch like a girl. And then they light the spaceship on fire. The humans escape.
Well, I mean, after, the male alien throws the female alien because she's trying to like, look. he's been talking for like 25 minutes. Let me basically tell you why we're here and why this works. And he's like, don't talk over me, woman. And it's just like, and I like that the human man's like, fuck you. You're not going to do that to a woman.
I love how this movie is so 1950s, which is like, honey, the men are talking. Please, God,
That's when I lay his ass out.
You were so happy at the end of this when that alien got dropped.
I did.
But that happens. The alien gets dropped. Trent beats the hell out of him. They knock over the ham radio set, lights the
Not the ham radio.
Not the ham radio. It lights the spaceship on fire. The humans escape, and they get to watch the flying saucer float off and explode. And because it exploded, it killed the electro beams that were keeping the ghouls alive. And then we get to see Tor Johnson turn into a skeleton.
Kind of like when we see pretend Dracula turn into a skeleton.
Yes, he also turns into a skeleton. Do we see Vampira turn into a skeleton, or because Vampira kind of disappears after a while? Like when Tor Johnson comes back from the grave, she's like out of the movie.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't think we see her turn into a skeleton.
I don't think so.
That might have been something they forgot to do.
No, they would never forget to do something
like,
important
you know
like
what?
that.
I knew we were gonna forget to shoot something. We've already been here for 3 days. We really gotta check out.
Oh, was that how long it was? Was it a 3-day turnaround?
I couldn't find it anywhere.
Oh God!
I just know that it took him 2 weeks to write the script.
2 weeks for Ed? What he went through for spell check if it took him 2 weeks. Oh my! But that's like the gist of Plan 9 from Outer Space, right? Like that's what happens in the movie.
Yeah, that's more or less what happens in the movie. I know that the female alien, over the years, she like denied being part of this movie or wouldn't speak about it.
Mm-hmm.
The makeup artist, Harry Thomas, that worked on this movie, he got into a fight with Ed Wood and was like, you are not putting my name in the credits of this movie.
Oh, really?
So it's like there was a lot of people that were just like, yo, Ed, I'll do this for you, but you can't associate me with this. This is just... We're not having it.
Which is like fascinating, right? Okay, because we have now watched all of Plan 9. We have talked about all of Plan 9.
Yes.
And is Plan 9 from Outer Space a bad movie? Is it a movie that is poorly made? I think it's poorly made.
I think it's poorly made. I think he needed more than the 2 weeks to write the story for Plan 9, but it's a fun movie.
Okay, fun movie, I agree, but poorly made movie. Is this the kind of movie that is so bad you are like, don't put my name on it? Is this a movie you would be embarrassed to be a part of? Like if you're like a studio guy, or if you're like or studio gal,
thank you,
or like an up and coming actress or something, like if you're at the level where you're in a Ed Wood production, you're either on your way out of Hollywood or you are on the baseline, like the street level Hollywood.
I think for me, if I were a studio gal back in the day, I would have to keep my name on the credits because then I could say I was in a movie with Bela Lugosi.
See, and that is how people...
And Vampira.
And that right there is how Ed Wood got so many people to agree to this movie. Because he told everybody that this was Lugosi's last movie.
Yeah.
I have like the last stock footage. I have all the last footage of him. I can get you into Lugosi's last movie. And that's how he got so many people into this.
When realistically, it would be, Bride of the Monster is Lugosi's real last movie.
Yeah.
Where, you could be on set with him and talk to him and see him act it out instead of, well, yeah, technically it is his last movie, but it's stock footage.
Yeah.
It still counts.
That's the thing, because Lugosi's last speaking role and any performing role is Bride of the Monster, because there's one after where he's in it, but it's a silent film, or it's like a short or something
Like that.
Yeah, so it was Ed being disingenuous to get people to be in this movie.
So it's like, just for that reason I'd have to be, I gotta keep my name on this. But I could totally see being a person of that time and working on this and being like, you're gonna sink my career if I'm if I'm tied in with you.
This is the kind of movie people would be embarrassed about, right? Like, it's not made very well. I'm working with this guy in downtown Burbank that's like, he's got a lot of a gumption, but he's not got a lot of like know-how, which kind of gets me to the question, right? This is the question that we have posed for every single film of the month, the theme of the month. Was Ed Wood a good director? Because Plan 9 from Outer Space is considered, and was considered for like a long time, the worst movie ever made. It's from like the book The Golden Turkey Awards, and how they came to that conclusion was they watched a bunch of old B movies. This was the one that was like, the worst made, but it was also the one they could find easiest. And there was a vote that went out on the second edition, and people voted Plan 9 and Ed Wood as the worst film and the worst director of all time. Now, the criticism there is that that is a very small sample size. They basically only took movies you can find on public access late night in 1980s Hollywood. So now, in the year of our Lord 2024, after seeing, we've seen over 200 films. This is our 201st episode.
That's right.
Out of all the movies we've seen, out of all the movies we've seen outside of this in our lives, can you say conclusively, is Ed Wood the worst director of all time? Can you say Plan 9 is the worst film of all time?
No. No to both.
No to both?
No.
Okay. Why is that?
Because we've seen far worse.
We've seen far worse on this show.
On this show, we've worked with far worse.
What is the worst movie we've ever watched? Because Gangs of New York is our worst episode.
That's our worst episode.
But it's not a bad made movie.
It's not a bad made movie, no. I'm trying to think on the podcast, what was one that was just like absolutely foul?
I mean, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor wasn't good, but that was mostly because it was like it shit the bed.
Not all of the original cast was there. Brendan Fraser was still great. So was Jonathan, but it wasn't enough to
elevate a movie that was probably made 5 years too late.
Yeah. I'd really have to roll through it. I mean, I don't think we've seen something where we've recorded and been like, this was the worst thing we've ever seen. It's like, it's got to be stuff that we've seen on our own out of this show.
I mean, there's that Queen Mary movie that you
what
hated.
I was gonna say.
There's all those Hellraiser movies that I watched.
I was just gonna say, like, the Queen Mary one is the most recent one that I could think of. That was just like, you had the entire ship to yourself
during COVID. No questions asked.
So
what you can do.
You just had your actors there, and you just had so many different plot lines you were trying to run with, and it's just like, if you had just done something similar to Ghost Ship, that would have been awesome. You use the lore of everything that happened on the ship, but you're just kind of pulling things out of your ass, and it's just like, what? I mean, I got home the other day. My mom was watching this movie on Prime called Storm Cell, and it just looks so bad.
Storm Cell.
This killer
Lord.
storm. So it's like,
God.
We've seen bad movies where it's just like, I really don't know what you were thinking, and most of the time it's just, you're making this just to get the paycheck.
See, that's a thing. Bad movies, to me, come down to not the quality of the film. Like, the quality of a film can be bad, and I acknowledge that. Like, if the movie's poorly made, then it's not a great film.
Yeah.
But ambition and artistic integrity matter a lot to me.
And drive.
Yeah, drive. Well, that comes into the ambition thing. Like, if I watch a movie and I can tell whoever made this wanted to make this. This was a dream project. It's not well made, but you can tell there is love and there is care, and they are trying so hard to get what's in their head on screen. Then I respect it.
Yeah.
The bad movies to me are movies that are like soulless or corporate, are movies like I can watch and I can say, there is nothing of artistic value to this.
Yeah.
This is made purely to hold on to rights for something. This is made purely to get something out for the summer. This is made purely to cash grab. There's nothing here. Like, that's why Hellraiser Revelations, I think, is like probably the worst movie I've ever seen, because it is that movie incarnate. It's a movie that, like, Doug Bradley, Pinhead, who was in fucking Hellworld, Hellraiser 8, he refused to come back to that movie because they only wanted to make the movie to hold on to the rights of Hellraiser. And watching it is like they're filming it in some producer's house. It's the whole movie. Everything is cheap. You can tell they never ever wanted this to make any. They didn't make this for Hellraiser fans. They made it for a corporate bottom line, and those are the movies I don't like. Plane 9 from Outer Space, like, Ed Wood's trying.
Yeah.
And I respect the effort. You know, maybe he doesn't hit it every time.
No, but I mean,
respect the effort.
You could see that there's a vision there, there's a goal there, and it's like, okay, this really isn't working out with the aliens in the end. This is kind of dragging. This is a little ridiculous.
You can tell he wants to do way more than his budget allows, and he's just going for it anyway.
Yeah, so it's like, but you got to give the guy credit. He is trying.
Yes.
He's trying. He's passionate about this. Even after this came out, this was like his pride and joy. It's like, what do you mean people don't like it? I love this. And it's like, give it to him. He had a vision. He created this piece of art, and he loves his own work.
Yeah, and there's nothing here that I could say I hate. Like, here's the thing. Like, movies that are, like, bad movies, right?
Yeah.
I know people talk about, like, oh, disturbing cinema and this and that. I'm like, look, if your movie only exists to be edgy and gross, I'm not here for it.
Yeah.
Like, those movies, like, if your movies exist to just be offensive, then I'm like, I don't care about it. There's nothing here that's offensive. There's nothing here that I watch and I'm like, I am so angry that this movie is being made. There's nothing like awful about this. It's a movie that's just like, it's funny and dumb. That's the thing. It's funny and dumb. But Ed Wood, as a director, we've watched 3 of his films, probably his most notable films.
Yes.
Was he a bad director? Was he a bad director of actors? Like, we can agree he was a filmmaker. He was an auteur. He knew what he was doing. But executing his vision.
Can I just say that he was not a great director?
I would agree he is not a great director by any stretch of the imagination.
He was a director.
He was a director. We could qualify it as that, yes.
Because, I mean, I don't really want to call him bad because the guy had a vision. The guy had a dream. And he just didn't quite have the skill set or maybe the attention span to learn how to get all these things to work. I feel like, with Tor Johnson coming out of the grave, that was like his Oscar moment, his masterpiece moment. I finally created it after, doing paintings for years and not turning out. That was the one that turned out, and I can never do it ever again. I don't know how I did it.
That's the thing. There are moments of inspired filmmaking in the 3 movies.
In the 3 movies that we watched.
Right? Like, the Tor Johnson coming out of the grave, I'm like, okay, visually,
yes.
he's finally figured it out. The performance that Lugosi gives, right?
Yes.
Like, how much of that was Lugosi? How much of that was Ed Wood? At the end of the day, Ed Wood, put the movie together and caught it on camera, right? But and he wrote it specifically for Lugosi, so like he got his great performance.
And then him, ripping his heart out and putting it on the screen for Glenn or Glenda.
Yes, the pure artistic like integrity to not care what the audience thinks and just puts it out, because they paid him to make some cheap exploitation film, and he was like, I'm gonna make a movie that is about me, my struggles, my soul, and put everything of me on screen. And he did it, and people laughed at him, and Ed was like, I'm gonna keep making my movies, goddammit, because I got the drive. And for that, I can't call him a bad director either.
That's why it's like, I can't call him great, but I'm not gonna call him bad.
He was a director that should have been making movies later in the independent era.
Yeah.
Maybe he would have had a better time if he worked in like the 70s with like Roger Corman.
Or if he had been an actor.
He probably would have gotten by as an actor.
Yeah.
He wasn't bad in Glenn or Glenda. He could have had a supporting role in like romantic comedies or something. He can definitely play that line. But after Plan 9 from Outer Space, we kind of have to talk about it. After Plan 9 from Outer Space, Ed Wood did not really make a lot of great films afterwards.
No.
I think he starts getting into the alcoholism, and he starts making
His pulp novels.
He starts shooting some much racier and cheaper material, and that is the sad conclusion of the Ed Wood as a director, which
and falling severely into alcoholism.
Very severely into alcoholism. And I feel sad about that, because I think he probably... It's one of those things where if he lived a few years longer, when people started rediscovering his films, I think that would have made it worth it, right?
Yeah.
All like the decade plus of just having a shitty lot in life. If he could have kept that like can-do spirit, like I'll make my movies no matter what anyone says, and made it to the rediscovered era of the 1980s.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a nice capstone on his life. But even then, Tim Burton made probably the most loving tribute to the man that cinema could have provided. And that's what inspired this month. And I'm happy we did it.
Me too. And hopefully Ed is happy that we watched his movies. We talked about them. Hopefully you guys will watch them too. They're free on YouTube.
They are all free on YouTube.
At least these three. I don't know how many of the rest of them have survived or if they're out there.
I would imagine anything before 75 is free on YouTube. Anything that's not his like porno stuff, you can find.
Because
actually that would be so I found this out.
We're not reviewing the pornos.
No, we're not reviewing the pornos, but I found this out. So this is for the audience out there, for 18 plus factoids. Ed Wood actually is one of the more important figures in American pornography, because he was one of the first directors to film, I think it was called Swedish erotica, which was the original like loop pornography films of American cinema. So yeah, all that early stuff, he directed like the first huge batch of them. So he is a very important figure in that section of film history. Thank you, college education, for having a course or a section on pornography in American cinema. It was weird.
And speaking of college education, we're not talking about porno about that. We're talking about USC that also was honoring Ed Wood's memory by having their film students, recreate scenes from some of his films.
Yeah, we talked about that during the Bride of the Monster episode, but it's about, I think you can find most of those on YouTube. I looked those up. You can find like the USC version of Plan 9 from Outer Space. I think there's enough projects that actually you can stitch it together as a whole movie now.
And that's why it's like, I don't know if the school still continues to do that or that's something that they've kind of stopped doing. But I think that's interesting to use, a director who did, smaller budget films, and let's see, can we compete with them? Because, I mean, you see some of these shots and it's like, damn, how did he do that?
So honestly, that's the thing. Like in Glen or Glenda, Bride of Monster, Plan 9 from Outer Space, there's some stuff where I'm like, God, like you can't deny he knew what looked okay.
Yeah.
Maybe the flying saucers didn't look good, but he knew what like that's what a movie looks like. Like that's what a movie looks like.
I mean, they weren't paper plates like I had thought they were going to be. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, they were like actual like models.
They were toy models. So it's like, okay, gotta give it to him. At least he went out, and we're going to at least try to use something that looks like a flying saucer.
But we have watched all of Ed Wood.
Well, we've watched these three films.
We've watched these three. And that brings us to the end of Ed Wood month. I'm going to try not to die right now.
Yeah, you do this at the end of every episode.
I get out of breath. But we are at the end of Ed Wood month. What are we doing next month? You look so excited.
Oh, I am very excited. I've been waiting for this day for 4 years. It's finally happening.
Yeah.
You've made me suffer through things in the past.
Yeah.
Now it's my turn to really let the power back into my life.
Jesus Christ.
Next month, we are talking about
But if you wanted to catch that or see that, where can they go?
If you want to listen to us on a different platform than you currently are, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and YouTube.
Yes, you can go to us on YouTube. That is the Film Vault on YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that we are actually recording video for this.
We're real people.
We are real people. This is something we're going to try and do on, important episodes. It might not be every episode we'll do a video podcast, but maybe the last episode every month it'll be a video. So you can come and check that out there, like, comment, and subscribe, and see the huge 200 episode back catalog of this show.
Yes.
But if you wanted to check us out on our social media to see what we're doing outside of the podcast, where can they go?
You could go to Instagram at the Film Club Podcast, where we post upcoming episodes, daily stories, adventures we go on. This is coming out the end of July, so we should have gone to Midsummer by this point.
Should have, yeah.
Should have. But if we already have, hit us up on Instagram. Go look at our stories of that adventure or anything else we're going to be doing this summer.
And with that,
we'll see you next week at the Film Club.
Have a good week, everybody.